Storytime test. I 16 female think my stepdad wants to do something to me. I'm not really sure what that thing is, and I'm not even sure if I'm just overreacting. I kind of need advice. My mom started dating him when I was 7, and they just recently got married, so he's been in my life for a long time. I've never really seen any red flags or anything until recently. I've been catching him just staring at me, and it creeps me out because he just keeps staring, even when I stare back at him, almost like he's looking through me. But he's never touched me until last week when we were alone on a trail. My family usually goes on weekly hiking trips together, and that was the plan, but the day before we were all supposed to leave, my mom got really sick. It was like, as soon as we finished eating dinner, my mom started vomiting all over the place. Then a couple of hours later, my little brother started doing the same thing. I thought that meant we would just skip the week, and I was glad because I didn't want to go anyway. But that morning we were supposed to leave. I could hear my mom and stepdad arguing in their room. My mom was saying it didn't make sense for him to take just me, and my stepdad was saying it didn't make sense for him and me to stay in the house since we were the only two not sick. I for sure did not want to go with just my stepdad, but I wasn't afraid. So when my mom asked me what I wanted to do, I said I'd go, because I didn't want to hurt my stepdad's feelings. It was a huge mistake. The drive up to the trails was like an hour, and it wasn't bad. We got there, chose an easier trail, and everything seemed fine. Then out of nowhere my stepdad started to go off of the trail, even though it's something he tells us never to do. That was the first time I started to feel weird, but I still wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of getting lost. We were just walking and exploring when suddenly everything went dark. I had no idea what was happening, but I couldn't see anything. It was hard to breathe, and someone was bear hugging me and trying to get me on the ground. I just kept kicking and throwing my head back, punching anything I could do to get the person off of me. I was starting to get really tired, so I started screaming for my stepdad to help me, but he didn't answer me. I thought I would never make it out of those woods, but I wanted to at least see who was doing this to me. So I stopped fighting whoever it was and started trying to get rid of the thing covering my face. I was on the ground almost immediately, but I was able to take what ended up being a bag off of my head, and that's when I saw it. I didn't want to believe it, but it was my stepdad kneeling over me. He had this look on his face that I can't even describe, and I was terrified. But as soon as he realized the bag was off of my head and I could see him, he started smiling and then laughing. I didn't think any of it was funny, but he just kept on laughing. Then he told me I did a really good job, and I passed his self-defense test with flying colors. I really didn't believe him, and I still don't, but I felt like I had to play along because I was still out in the woods alone with him. The rest of the hike was a nightmare, and that night when we got home I couldn't sleep at all. At one point my stepdad was just standing outside my room for what felt like hours. He was pacing back and forth and whispering to himself. I just pretended to be asleep. It's been almost a week since we went hiking, which means our next hiking trip is in a couple of days. Nothing else has happened, so I'm not sure if I should tell someone or just leave it alone. I don't want to make a big deal over nothing, but at the same time, I don't think what happened in the woods was a self-defense test. Storytime the most. I never thought I would be afraid of someone I love, but here we are. I, 24, female, live with my mom and my stepfather. I mean, he's technically my stepfather, but he's been in my life since I was around 4. For as long as I could remember, I had always had these weird dreams about camping trips with my stepfather. Every time I had one of these dreams, I would wake up sweaty, panicked, and feeling alone. I knew they were dreams, but they always felt weird because there was so much detail. I never thought much of it, and I just brushed them off as weird dreams. That is until one day I was talking to my mom, and she said something that made me rethink everything. We were sitting looking at pictures when we came across a picture of me holding a fish. Fear shot through my body as I saw myself wearing the same jacket I always saw in my dreams. I asked my mom what the picture was from, and I could see all over her face that something was wrong. She said she was surprised I didn't remember, and then she told me the story that made me sick to my stomach. Apparently I used to go on camping trips with my stepfather all of the time until it ended in tragedy. The last time I went on a camping trip with my stepfather, I called my mom in the middle of the night screaming. She sent the police to where I was, and they found me there alone. But I remembered something while my mom was telling me the story. I wasn't screaming and crying because I was alone. I was screaming and crying because I saw a girl underneath plastic in the back of my stepfather's truck. I remembered trying to shake her awake, but instead her head rolled back, and she was staring at me with dead, empty eyes. My stepfather still goes on camping trips, and I choose to believe he's just fishing. It's the lie I tell myself the most.
Storytime. Now, I 35 male watch my teenage stepdaughter in the bathroom. I know what you're thinking, but it's not like that. I never meant to start watching her, but it kind of just happened. About 5 years ago I started dating my now wife, and she already had Sam, my stepdaughter. At the time Sam was 8 and life was pretty strained. My wife and I both worked more than one job, our apartment was terrible, and money was still really tight. Then about 2 years into dating something happened that changed everything for all of us, and it's honestly the reason I even started doing what I'm doing. My wife got a phone call letting her know that her father had passed away, and he left her the house she grew up in. I thought it was great news, and I thought it would be the end of all our money problems. It wasn't a huge house, but Sam could have her own room with a bathroom in it, plus my wife, and I would have our privacy too. But my wife said she absolutely would not under any circumstances move into that house. When I asked her why, she said she could never prove it, but she always felt like someone was watching her. I managed to talk her into moving in anyway, and now we're here. I was right about it making our lives easier financially, and Sam loves having her own space. But one night I was in my closet while Sam was in her bathroom. It was completely dark in the closet, except for one stream of light coming from the wall in a weird place. I realized it was a hole and originally thought about how I should fix it. I knew it was a terrible idea, but I looked through the hole, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had a full view of Sam's entire bathroom. It was almost like the bathroom was designed specifically to be seen from the hole in my closet. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence, but I kept thinking about how my wife always felt like she was being watched. At first I was disgusted. Sam was in the shower, so I didn't really see anything. I knew I couldn't tell my wife because I knew it would just freak her out. I had decided I would fix the hole as soon as I could, but I found myself wanting to look through the hole whenever Sam was in her bathroom. I know how it sounds, but I never watch if she's doing something private. I know it's not the best thing to do, but I don't want to stop because I think this is making us grow closer together. Plus I feel like this has made me love Sam more. I don't know what made my wife's dad start watching her in the bathroom, but I do think I'm starting to get it now.
Storytime. Me. When I was in high school, I had this really good friend named Amber. I would always spend time at her house, and she would always come over to my house. Then in the beginning of our junior year, everything started to get really weird. Amber's mom started being really mean to me, and I had no idea why, or what I did. On the other hand, Amber's dad was really nice to me, kind of too nice, and it made me feel gross. He would always ask for hugs, and one time he bought me a bracelet for no reason at all. Everything was all weird, and made me super uncomfortable, so I decided to just stay away from Amber's house. By the middle of our junior year, Amber's parents were divorced, and her mom moved out. I thought that meant I could go to her house again, hoping it would be less weird. I couldn't have been more wrong, and it almost cost me everything. The first time I went, Amber's dad kept telling me how much he missed me, and he hugged me over and over again. I was still really grossed out, but I missed hanging out with Amber, so when she asked, I agreed to spend the night. The next morning when I was packing my things up, I noticed some of my dirty personal stuff was missing. Yeah, it's exactly what you're thinking. I thought the worst right away, but I didn't want to believe it, so I pushed it out of my mind. About a week later, I got a text from Amber saying she wanted me to come over and hang out. When I got to her house, her dad opened the door. I knew it was weird because Amber would always meet me outside since like middle school. I almost went inside, but my phone went off, and what I saw when I looked at the screen made my blood run cold. It was Amber asking me what I was doing that night. When I looked up from my phone, Amber's dad had this look in his eyes that scared the shite out of me. Something inside was screaming for me to run, but I knew not to turn my back to him. I backed away, and as soon as there was enough distance between us, I ran all the way home. After that, Amber and I drifted apart and went our separate ways after graduation. Today I turned on the TV, and there was Amber's dad staring back at me. He had the same look in his eyes that made me sick to my stomach. I tried to pay attention, but everything started to sound really far away. Amber's dad had 32 victims. They all looked like me.